The bottom line is I got into politics because I lost a bet in a bar. So I've watched it from all sides. I know all the barnacles on the bottom of the boat, so fire away, ask away. It's also shown me that the carnivorous eat your own nature of political parties. The Constitution doesn't need to be rewritten, it needs to be reread. I want to encourage everybody who hits this podcast to be an independent thinker because the country needs you to do that. We need you to think for yourself.
All right. Well, this episode of the Independent Voter podcast is going to be a good one, I think. I think so, unless she screws it up. But no, I mean, there's some of the people that, you get to meet along the way have, their own series of stories and come to a space where, as we always say, independence a mindset. It's not an ideology. So there's people that have been Democrats their whole life, Republicans their whole life. Cara's here with Ann, and I bet your paths have crossed in different ways, some that you knew and some that you don't. But you told me as you was coming on the show that you never actually had met Ann, who you kind of like you've also told me you're like, wait, Ann Dunsmore's coming on the show? Like, Ann, really? She's kind of a legend, right? So, well, I'll let you do your own introduction further than that. But we have our special guest, Ann Dunsmore. She has been more on the Republican side of the aisle for more than a couple decades, and we've talked about some of these issues and NPP voters. So I said, come on the show. Let's talk about it from your perspective. What's going on in that world, and how did you get here, and some of your background. Why don't you just start with some of your background? How the hell did you end up on this podcast?
When did you start? When did you first start? Like, what was your first campaign, Ann? When did you first start working in politics?
Well, as a student, actually, in college in 1976, I want to say.
Okay.
It could have been 75. I started college in 1974. I was actually an Asian studies major and, economies of third world nations. Maybe I should have stuck with that. But I also finished college a year early. So I went back to D.C. and started taking graduate school classes. Waited for my class to graduate. And I was bartending. Family's got a long history in restaurants. And the bottom line is I got into politics because I lost a bet in a bar.
Okay. I want to know all about it. Like, so you lost a bet in a bar in D.C. in the 70s.
Exactly. And so we used to have a lot
What
of
bar was it? Was it like Clyde's or which one?
No, it was American Cafe. And I had helped open up the one on the Senate side down on Capitol Hill. And, it was all men pretty much. And so I got the midnight shift and we were open until 3 or 4. We'd get all the drunks, after they've been out all night. So clearly I got a lot of political staffers.
Yeah.
And so, that at that time night, you let half your staff go and I bartended until we couldn't anymore, but we could serve pretty late if I remember correctly. And so somebody, started betting on some weird fact, and the loser had to volunteer. So this had to have actually been around 78. The loser had to volunteer for the presidential campaign of their choice. And I was just sort of like, listen, I want the Peace Corps. I don't want to do politics. And so I lost, and my stepfather at the time had been in Fraser Ruder and Finn, which was a really big PR firm at the time, largely Democrat. And he said, "Why don't you
go
visit a handful of the campaigns, see which one you like?" So I went to the Kennedy campaign. That was ridiculous. It was a very predatory environment with the women and the men. And I was just sitting there going, yeah, I got enough of that at work. And then he said, okay, now go visit a Republican campaign. George Bush had just moved his campaign from Houston to
Senior, right?
George Herbert Walker Bush.
HW.
So now we're like 78, 79, right? Because
correct.
Great.
And I went in there and immediately started working with the national director of the volunteer program. And I ended up never leaving. I quit my job at the restaurant, took a job working at night. And what happens on a political campaign, as you well know, is that if you work 24/7, you get moved up to the C-suite really fast. Yeah. So I moved upstairs to where Jim Baker was sitting. Margaret Tutwiler was working for him. Margaret Glasscock was the secretary. I ended up working for Pete Teeley, who was the press secretary. And, back then you had that AP machine sitting there, and there's 2 bells, 3 bells, 4 bells. So I was in there for Voodoo Economics, was, Pete typing madly. David Keene was on that floor. David Sparks with Seth Halpert, who recently got himself in a twist over, whether or not he's working with the Russians. A lot of guys from the Rand Institute were over there. So I was right. Richie Bond was our person in California. I was right in the thick of it all. And
how old are you? Like, you're pretty young. So you're just out of college, really, like post-college.
Yeah. So it was like
grad school.
22, 23. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the same time that I started working in politics, Anne. I was 20.
Well, but I started
22 on a presidential.
Yeah. Well, in college, I actually ended up volunteering for Scoop Jackson. I don't know how or why.
In Washington State, yeah.
Yeah, but I was in Massachusetts, and I was at a women's college, and sort of there was nothing to do on weekends. So they were like, come, let's go do a rally, whatever. So I wouldn't call that full engagement.
No. But anyway, when you're like doing the George Bush's campaign in Washington with Jim Baker, at 22, then you're like, oh my God, like, really? Like, what am I doing here? Like, this is amazing.
I didn't understand the magnitude or the import of all these people at the time. But I'd also grown up in an atmosphere where there were important people around us all the time. So this was not, something
super foreign to you. Okay.
No.
Okay.
Just not political people, but, my great uncle was the architect on the rebuild of the White House under Roosevelt. So the Oval Office, all of those things were around me. But it was a very Roosevelt-centric family that I grew up in. And so bottom line is, we knew we were going to lose, and Baker was doing his best to give all of us that had worked hard an experience out in the field that we could put in our resume. I was handling press. So I went to Oregon. And Oregon, Michigan were on the same day. We won Michigan, lost Oregon, and everything was over. But my job was to handle all the kids. So I became friends with Neil, Marvin, and Jeb. Instantly. So, and then when it came time to vote, I couldn't really, I met my boyfriend out there, and we decided to move down to California together, where I had lived. I have a huge family in California at the time. I still do. Anyway, so that started it. I ended up working for a campaign firm doing demographic research. And, and then, of course, the only job I could get when the campaign was over was fundraising. And, a lot of the Reagan people in California went and helped Mike Curb for governor, who got his butt kicked in the general by a man named George Duke Majan. And, I learned a lot during that time. I was working for a lot of the guys that became cavemen. I was not a conservative, but I wound up being around a lot of pretty brilliant minds. I mean, it was really, and I went right into working for Carol Hallett. And so I've been around California politics at a very high level since 1980, I would say.
Amazing.
We've only made it to 1980. I'm like, I think Anne needs her own show. Like, we're like,
just to go through my resume.
We're like halfway through our time. She's made it to 1980, but this is it's fascinating. I love this stuff. I wonk out over this.
That's it. So I've watched it from all sides. I know all the barnacles on the bottom of the boat. So fire away, ask away.
Well, okay. Well, all right. You're on the Independent Voter podcast. I mean, you probably have like 17,000 stories. Like, what story would you give on here that would be like, wow, this was something I think about in my career that was just like, wow, I got to be a part of that?
Well, Muhammad Ali. Because I haven't been involved just with politics. I took my expertise to medicine. I became a fundraiser for lack of anything else.
That's because like a lot of women in politics. I mean, I remember when I first started, they said, okay, you can be either a scheduler or a fundraiser.
Oh, great.
And I said, oh, I'll be the scheduler. Like, that makes sense. And, but that was it. And until I discovered research, like if I knew more about everybody else, about the race, then they'd let me in the room. I was going to be a scheduler forever, picking up people's dry cleaning.
Fundraising gets you to the table pretty fast too, I got to say.
I bet you're right. Yeah. So you did fundraising, I did scheduling, but that's really all they let women do, Chad. It was different than it is now, for sure.
It's amazing how frantic men get when they don't know where the money's coming from. So, but I did have an opportunity to be a part of the rebuilding the UCLA campus after the Northridge earthquake. They brought me in. Michael Ovitz brought me in there to help raise $1.2 billion.
I'm a Bruin. I'm a Bruin. Me too. Thank you. I'm a Bruin. I'm a Bruin.
Same.
And so, I learned a lot from that. I got to see the difference between institutional fundraising. Big ask became very important. Breaking the barrier of, asking for $10,000 table at the Century Plaza to just give us $100,000, $250,000, $1 million. That was part of that switch over to that kind of money, at a much broader level. So, that was kind of interesting. I did work for Ali, which was really gratifying. Got to really be around him when he was you could still talk to him and have, experience and listen to his opinions and stuff like that. But I've been around a lot of very high profile people, in a space where I was not concerned as to whether or not I was an equal. I was in the room. I had an opinion. They listened to me. I learned how not to take advantage of that. A lot of people would argue with that, but that's okay. I argue back. And, and then you get to sit around with the making of a president, or Pete Wilson's reelection was on the table as happening or not happening. And I was brought in as a last, like the Exxon Valdez kind of situation. And we turned it exactly 180 degrees around. And it took a team of men to believe a strategy that I put on the table and be supportive of it and not wish for my demise. I mean, there were a lot of people on the table, jobs. And so, I've seen a lot of that. I know what it takes. I know that every single effort worth making is a very steep hill that you can't be afraid of. And I was just too stupid to know that I didn't. There was an easier way to make money. But
that's for sure.
There's a lot of stories to tell, but it's also shown me that the carnivorous, eat your own nature of political parties. And this brings us back to the import of what we're seeing now, which is a movement to where people are being forced to think on their own. And I like it. I'm not happy that we forced ourselves, both parties, into a space where, it's going to be very difficult to define this country on the 250th anniversary, which I find incredibly ironic. I have a little saying: the Constitution doesn't need to be rewritten; it needs to be reread. And I really believe that's true, and I find a lot of joy in seeing that that's like a old Brooks Brothers suit, man. You can put it on any time, and it still works, and that Constitution still works, and it needs a little tweaking here and there, but I'm fascinated about what's going on, and I guess I'm in it. So,
we focus, especially folks in politics, and we're like, oh, what side are you on? What are you doing, like that stuff? But I know, because I think when I first met you, we kind of got to this conversation quickly, because it's obvious that you have a passion for it. I make it out in the background. You have your Angel Force, banner there. And I think, for our listeners, is to understand, like, most of us who have some, whether it's 1 foot or 2 feet in the political, we're also people. We have lives, and there's things we're passionate about that we may be able to utilize our connection into politics to promote, but it has nothing to do with politics. I just want to give you a moment, like, I've seen the passion you have for this. It's an important issue, and when you go to bed at night and forget this campaign or that campaign, tell me why the Angel Force has been something that I can tell. I knew immediately has really driven you to, to do everything you do.
Yeah. So Angel Force USA raises awareness about military suicide or suicide in the military community. And it's a pretty horrendous commentary on where we are, I think, as a nation. And again, on the 250th anniversary, you're looking at our true patriots and people who put themselves, their lives on the line for this country, are killing themselves at an incredibly high rate. Estimates go from 17 an hour to 45 an hour. So, while we're doing this, people are killing themselves.
That's just unbelievable, right now, Anne. That's just like, you hear that and it's like it doesn't go.
It doesn't even register. It's like, how is that
even possible?
Well, and you see it when teen suicide is also a big deal, but and the bigger issue is it's a contagion. So what happens is there's a domino effect. So one suicide, this is statistically true. One suicide changes 135 lives. Now that is a completed suicide in that generational line, right? That doesn't count the waterfall effect through subsequent generations. But there's a sad, classic stories. Two battle buddies come home. They're excited. They start a business. One gets put on some medication. By the way, there's 125 roughly medications for depression, and every single one of them carries a black box warning for suicide. Every single one of them. So he starts taking this medication that I won't name and ends up killing himself within 2 weeks of taking the medication. And then his buddy, who the father then becomes so close to through the death of his own son, he commits we don't use the word commit. He dies by suicide a month later. And this is so out of 143 people who are immediate family of active duty members of the military, 96 of them die by suicide are dependents. That's kids. The others are siblings. So you have this terrible situation, and it's hard to ignore. And I know there's a reason that I was doing politics, and then I latched onto this. My father never died by suicide, but he served in Korea in a really horrific situation at Cap Young, which has been documented as one of the worst battles. He was there for 2 years. So, but he was trying to die all the time, and he wasn't committed to it. So, I have a real passion for it. I think it's something that shows the ultimate act, the ultimate effect of poor governance. Sorry to make that connection.
Well, we definitely say that bad governance is the source of all suffering in this world, I think. And, that's why we work so hard on trying to get the governance right and trying to improve it. And that's, but
it also opens your heart up because you see these people get angry, and anger is not a base fear. Is not a base emotion. Fear is a base emotion of anger. Right. And if you know that about somebody that you find to be hostile, instead of telling them to F off, you need to look at them differently. You need to see from your heart through your eyes, not just here. It's here and here. And that's called being a complete human. And I hope to achieve that despite my involvement in politics.
I was just reading about the USS Abe Lincoln, right? Yeah. It's in the news right now.
Jumping off the ship.
They're jumping off the ship to try to kill themselves. And, they've been out there for, I think, 259, 265 days.
280, maybe now.
Yeah, in a combat zone for a large portion of that, not able to come off the ship. And it's not just about them not having, fresh lettuce. It's
isolating.
It's beyond. It's beyond. And, the president got asked, Chad, I know, the president got asked and he said, it's not even long enough. I mean, that was his answer. It's not, they haven't been out there long enough. There's a huge disconnect between like the leadership and the expectations. And I mean, how can we, I feel so much for the wives, right? For the partners of the people who they can't get a phone call on, maybe children were born, they can't even go to shore. It's a problem.
Yeah. Well,
not a proud moment for this country.
No, there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, I think this is one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is that, it's like, the people in politics, it's like we get defined by, the political circumstances and our perspective, but there's so many more things in our life. You realize, like, what the heck does that have to do with anything political or party or whatever? It's something, right? And that's ultimately is right. If you could solve
9
one
out of
thing,
10 things,
like
9 out of 10, Chad.
Yeah, but that's so you do all this stuff and work in politics because that's what we care about, right? And so, I mean, we could have a whole show, a series on Angel Force. We could have a whole show on just on Ann's his history or biography, right? So
or bad attitude.
I can guarantee Ann's going to be back on this call. Part of it is I wanted to connect Ann with Cara because Cara has her own biography she can write from coming up from the other side of the political spectrum, right? And you get here and you realize, like, here's two women who started at a time when it, like you said, Cara, it wasn't like every opportunity was open, and who like run, not only have, like, I use this analogy as like some people take they carry the tide and some people turn the tide, right? And both of you are tide turners, right? It's like, no, fuck it, I'm going to be a captain and turn the ship.
We
right?
are the tide.
And,
we are the tide. We're not tide turners.
Tide, right?
We
so,
are
like,
the
that's
tide.
Why,
right?
I don't know. I like having. I enjoy having both you on. Selfishly, I'm sure you guys might do some shows without me, and then you can talk shit about me or whatever you want to do. But
I want to call Cara and I something different. And here we go. Maybe this is the title of our joint podcast. We're not the tide. We're not the ship on the ocean. We're the rogue wave.
All right. All right, we don't even the one we don't even know where the hell that came from. Where the hell did that come from?
Because you have to. Hey, listen, you have to disturb the flow, and that's the only way you can make change. Is to be a disruptor, not necessarily a passive one. I focus on just sort of saying what needs to be said, and then making everybody sort of be transparent about whether they shush
and
me.
It interrupts. But Ann, it's right. It interrupts the drift.
Good luck stopping this podcast.
Yeah. The drift, but the drift is the problem, right? The drift is the problem. We have to act against the drift.
Yeah. Right? So there you go. But that's a perfect way to frame why the hell did Ann come on? She just put it. I've never said it that way. I think I'm going to steal her line. It's like, yeah, we're upsetting the tide. We're freaking,
Next time we're going to put Newton's Cradle on the show because you know how much I love that, and it's called Flicking the Middle because it brings both of those radical sides back down, and you can actually get something.
We'll
done.
have a whole show about where disposition
we'll
of whether this
is on the little balls.
Well, all right. Well, Ann Dunsmore, thank you for your time. I know you never stop. I don't know when you sleep, but we appreciate you spending some time with us, and I'm sure we'll have you on again, our listeners. Right? If you want to listen to some awesome people like Ann, subscribe to our podcast. We're going to invite Ann to write on IVN and, be a part of their community. Like I said, is like, we got people that have been on the left, the right. We don't give a shit. Like, let's just have a conversation.
Yeah. I mean, this is not like the place where the mushy moderates come to, talk about milquetoast solutions either.
Like
right?
We can actually disagree with each other and be like, Cara, you're full of shit, I think. Right? Or Ann. But that's the whole point. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, no, it's important. And I want to encourage everybody who hits this podcast to be an independent thinker because the country needs you to do that. We need you to think for yourself. And we're here to sort of throw a lot of shit against the wall. Now that I know I can say that, I'll be saying it all the time.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Lena, as always, for dealing with us and doing a number show. Our Colombian American Lena. So we'll talk soon.
All right.
This is the Independent Voter Podcast, sponsored by the Independent Voter Project and produced by Olas Media. Remember, you can always find the Independent Voter Podcast or the How It Really Works series at ivn.us. Follow and subscribe at olasmedia.com.
Olas Media.